Hello friends, it's time for a question and answer session. I asked for questions last week on Facebook and you guys got right on it. So let's get to the answering. My first question is from Mark. What are your thoughts on the new Capture NXD? I like it. I like it for what it is though. It's not a Lightroom replacement. I've done a little editing in it, but I use it mainly to convert RAW images to JPEG images. But it's quicker, easier, and more reliable than View NX2 for that. And it's free on Nikon's site. One thing that I really like is doing conversions from RAW using the exact same features and settings that are native to the camera. If I change the RAW image from standard to, say, vivid, it's doing the conversion as though I shot vivid in the camera in the first place. Matt says, SnapChick, with your creativity, I would sure like to see you do some light painting or fire twirling. I think fire twirling would be awesome, but also probably not a great idea for me. Maybe photos by candlelight would be safer. I have done some light painting though, and I should probably do something like that for you guys. I'll add it to my list. Rick has 2 questions. How about an explanation of hyperfocal distance and an explanation of the digital formats, FXD, X4/3, and any others I have missed? I am a film guy thinking about digital. Okay, let's start with hyperfocal distance. It is where you have the most depth of field that you can, or in other words, it is the point at which your scene will be in focus from a certain point nearer to you out to infinity. Now the hyperfocal distance is different for different focal lengths and apertures. It can be calculated, or there are charts out there that can help you out. And many lenses have a marking which shows you when the lens is set to hyperfocal. And on to Rick's other question. He's looking for an explanation of the different digital formats. You mentioned FX, DX, and Micro Four Thirds. FX and DX are the Nikon terms for full frame and cropped sensor DSLRs. They refer to the sensor size. Full frame is larger, about the same size as 35mm film. Crop sensor is smaller, approximately the size of APS film. Then you brought up Micro Four Thirds. This fits into the category of mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras. Several manufacturers make these, and they have an even smaller sensor than crop sensor DSLRs. And just to throw something else into the mix, there are also mirrorless full frame and cropped sensor cameras on the market now. Now, that's just the beginning, and I could talk all day about the different types of digital cameras, each of their benefits and their drawbacks. And Rick, you said that you're a film guy that is thinking about making the switch to digital, so I assume that you have some idea of the requirements that you have of your camera. So if you do want more help with your decision, shoot me an email and I can steer you in the right direction. In general, I think it's a good time to switch to digital since full-frame cameras are less expensive than ever. And one last thing, I do have a video and accompanying chart where I go over Nikon and Canon terminology. You can find the video here, and in the description of that video, you'll see a link to the chart on my site. I do realize that there are other camera brands than Canon and Nikon, so I do have an update to this video and chart on my to-do list. Okay, on to Frank's question. Hi, just asking if you ever have been to this place in the Grand Canyon area. I had no idea that a place like this existed in the Grand Canyon area. I know you like to take field trips, and this looks like a great place to go and test cameras. They said from the hilltop parking lot, it's an 8-mile hike to the village called Supai in the Havasu Canyon. From the village to Havasu Falls is 2 miles. Along the trail, there are 4 other waterfalls. Beautiful looking place. There is a lodge and campsites in the village. Check the internet on photos of Havasu Falls. Plan on going there in late October. I know of Supai, but I've actually never been there. I keep saying I'm going to go, but every time that I'm headed in that direction, my car magically takes me to the Grand Canyon National Park. I'm sure I'll get there someday though. And I do hear that the waterfalls are beautiful, so I really do want to go there. David says, how can you avoid falling into a routine after a while? In the past year, I've been doing the same type of assignment over and over, and while the results are not as good as I wish they were, I feel I got stuck in a routine and can't seem to be able to get out of it. Ugh, it sucks to be stuck, but I do have some suggestions for you. What I've found helpful is to just shake things up. Go shoot something that you don't normally shoot, just for you. Or go to a museum and look at art. Don't necessarily even bring your camera. In fact, not bringing your camera may help you to just see things in a different way and actually, shake some of those cobwebs out of the creative part of your mind. And actually, here's a video of what I do when I need a boost. Joseph says, confused about whether to buy the Nikon D750, the D810, or take the big leap and go into mirrorless. What are your thoughts? Well, my recommendation for you will definitely depend upon what you already have and what you like or don't like about it. I did just post my D750 review, and I will be posting a review of the D810 in the next couple weeks. In those reviews, I talk about who the cameras are good for and even who they may not be good for. And, throwing mirrorless into the mix makes things a little more difficult. There are some great mirrorless options out there now. In general, when choosing a camera, I suggest taking a look at the whole system that you're looking at the lenses and accessories available and their cost. And last, get the camera in your hands before you purchase it to make sure that you like using it. Even if you just play around with it while it's tethered to the counter at Best Buy, you'll be able to figure out at least if the menus make sense to you and if you feel like you would actually like to use it. Adam asks, what is your philosophy when photographing and as a business? Or maybe another way to say it, what drives your photography and what drives your business? Ooh, good question. I do photograph for myself for fun, and I photograph for clients for work, and I photograph for SnapChick. Also work and fun. In all of that, I see photography as an art, and I try to stay true to myself and to my art and my style. However, when I'm photographing for clients, I do try to please them. But I also don't take jobs where my client's vision for the photos is too far off from my own. This is something I'm very clear about up front, and if we don't have a shared vision, I am happy to help them find the best photographer for them. As for SnapChick, I share a lot of photos with you, whether or not I think they will be popular. That being said, I do run this business and I also try to please my audience. When my viewers like something, I just try to do more of it. Yossi says, have you read about the rumors that were going around about the new program from Nikon for DSLR firmware update called I Am Advancing? The due date, according to the rumors, was the 19th and nothing happened since. Any ideas? I did hear about that. The rumor is that there may be some sort of subscription for firmware updates and that it might even be a paid subscription. I don't know though. I don't put too much stock in rumors. If and when there's an announcement, I'll definitely make a video on my thoughts about it though. On to Gabriel. Which out of these cameras one could imagine for use in studio photography? Sony Alpha 7 II, Sony Alpha 7R, or Nikon D810 or D800E? Thank you very much and have a nice week. Oh, well, thank you. I hope you have a good week too. But I can imagine any of those being used in the studio. They're all great bodies. And I've always used Nikon's lenses, but Sony's 55mm prime impressed the heck out of me. Landry says, question for you, SnapChick. Could you please give me some tips on how to grow your business as a photographer and how to deal with competition? If you're just getting started, I suggest offering to assist established photographers in your area. You could end up being recommended by those photographers for jobs that they can't do. And then in going forward, my best advice on growing your business is simply doing great work and taking good care of your clients. That way, you'll get repeat work and possibly substantial word of mouth business as your clients tell people about you. I do have a video as well on finding your photography niche and creating an online portfolio to help people find you. But creating that niche for yourself and treating your clients well, that'll take care of the competition. Peter says, what can you tell me about the Olympus Stylus 1? Well, I know it's been out for about a year and it is a higher end point and shoot camera, but I haven't used it, so I can't give you any firsthand information. So if any of you guys out there have any thoughts on it, let us know in the comments. And now for Steven, who says, I use Pinterest to collect inspirational photos by famous photographers, hobbies, Photoshop tips, etc. I also see more and more photographers using Pinterest to promote their own photography. However, I'm hesitant to upload my pics as goodness knows where they'll end up. Any thoughts, or am I being overly cautious? Is watermarking my pics the way to go? Well, you're asking someone who makes her living from posting her work online. So you can probably guess what my answer is going to be. I don't watermark my images, but if it will make you feel better about posting online, I say go for it. The reality is that, legal or not, images posted online will be shared and even copied and distributed. A bit of vigilance helps if your images end up being commercially exploited, but most of the sharing that's done, it's better to be shared and get the exposure than get ignored. Tom, I know how well you love the mountains around where you live, so I was wondering if you have ever visited the Appalachian Mountains on the East Coast. No, I haven't. There is just so much in this country that I'd love to visit. I feel like I've been so many places, but there are still so many more places to get to. Zoran wants to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to see The Force Awakens? 11. Philip asks, what are 5 things you're excited to come out in 2015, and what are 3 things you hope will be announced in 2015? Interesting questions. I did just see something about the possibility of a smaller, lighter 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 lens from Nikon. Considering that I just purchased the current 24 to 70, I'm not sure if I'm really wanting this newer lens to come out because I'll probably want it, but I am interested in the prospect of more phase Fresnel lenses. I want to see Sony and Fujifilm continue to put pressure on the top 2 brands. And I want Pentax to keep making those tiny, cute, effective, interchangeable lens cameras. Jonathan asks, what's your favorite lens? Jonathan, I can't just pick one. I guess I could say, however, that I do adore a 50mm field of view, as many people do. On to Mark. Do you ever take out old cameras and run some film through them? I'm not ready to go back only to film, but I enjoy putting film through some of my old cameras when I can. Oh, definitely. I have a couple of film cameras that I like to take out every now and again. My FG, my N65, and I've really been wanting an FM3A or an F3. Now, Chip has a very important question. If you could be any hero, Marvel or DC, which one and why? And I feel like I have to say Wonder Woman. I mean, she's pretty awesome. Ha! Lonnie asks, I used Nikon D610. How good is it? Well, I've not used the D610, but I did use the D600, and I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite body. I do have a review of it here. Zoran asks, do you have a pinhole camera? Also, will you marry me? I do not have a pinhole camera. I might make one, though, on a random, Tuesday afternoon. Would you guys actually like to see that? Because I feel like it could be a fun video to make. But no, I will not marry you. Chris is looking to the future. Is mirrorless really the next big thing? Should I invest into a mirrorless system such as the Sony Alpha 7R or the mirrored Nikon D810? I mostly shoot landscapes and portraits. I can't say what would be best for you without knowing more information, like what do you currently shoot and what are your goals? In general, though, I think that the future, it's all about options. Danilo says, I would be kicking myself for getting rid of that pool table. Are you? No, it was fun to take photos with it, but I never played it. I much prefer the workout area that I have there now. Pierce says, Photoshop Elements, what do you think? I think it's great. It has a lot of flexibility, but isn't as overwhelming or as expensive as Photoshop. Photoshop is great, but most people don't need that much editing capability. Most of what I do in Photoshop could be readily done in Elements. Mark, have you heard anything about the Canon 5D Mark IV? When? Price? I've heard that there may be a replacement this year, but that's pretty much all I know right now. I don't really keep too close an eye on rumors, which I think I said earlier. There's always new cameras coming out, but man, chasing rumors all the time Takes a lot of time when you can just wait and get the real info when it's announced. Dale wants to know, what's a good way to shoot when it is snowing? Not so much to capture the falling flakes, but to do a landscape and get the overall grayness/whiteness right. From Providence, Rhode Island, where we are expecting a blizzard. Brr. Snow can be a challenge. I suggest spot metering on the snow so that it doesn't end up blown out, and then add about a stop of positive exposure compensation to get the snow white. And then dial in white balance to match your environment, because snow can end up confusing the camera and you'll end up with blue snow. If you don't get it perfect, don't miss the moment. Shoot it in RAW and get that white balance perfect when processing. Fortunately, since snow is white, it can be used when editing to easily get the white balance right. On to Dewan's question. High-speed sync with your flash, have you used it? And if so, what do you think? I rarely use it, but it can be helpful in situations like a really bright environment where you want to use a wide aperture but still need to use flash. It hurts the overall flash output, so I try to avoid it when I can and rather reposition myself or the subject. But if you have no other choice, it's another tool in the toolbox. Bob, in your opinion, what will mirrorless cameras eventually surpass DSLRs in sales? I'm thinking 3 to 5 years it will. What say you? Why or why not? Thanks. I think it makes sense that mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras will eventually surpass DSLRs in sales. They already have great mirrorless options out there, and they're only getting better. The mirror may be considered an antique in just a few years, but until speed, response, buffers, and buttons in mirrorless cameras match DSLRs, there is still plenty of room for DSLRs in the market. Also, I have not used a mirrorless camera with anywhere near the battery life of my DSLRs, but we will certainly see that change. Bacchus wants to know, how do you bracket manually? I am using a D3300 and have a tripod and remote for my camera, so I don't get shake from pressing the button. I would like to do HDR. Bracketing is taking the same photo multiple times using different exposures. Some cameras have the option to just do it for you. Others, like the Nikon D3300, don't. So to bracket manually, you can put your camera on the tripod so you'll get the same shot each time. Then figure out what settings get you a proper exposure, or at least a happy in between. Then you will need to underexpose a shot and overexpose a shot. And you can do this by shooting in manual mode and change any one of aperture, shutter speed, or ISO. Or you could use exposure compensation if you're shooting in program mode, aperture priority, or shutter priority. To take the most control of the process, shoot in manual mode and adjust either the shutter speed or aperture above and below the camera's exposure decision. In my view, having the ability to review the image on the LCD screen and even inspect the histogram when it's needed, it diminishes the need for bracketing in DSLRs. Also, features such as active delighting and highlight weighted metering reduce the need for bracketing also. And the D3300 has all of those options except for highlight weighted metering. Ken, do you wonder if by buying the latest camera, some people feel that it is a sure way of taking better photographs by the maker's lure? Some people definitely think that a new camera or other new gear will automatically give them better photos. And that just isn't always the case. Sometimes new gear will help you get the shot you want, but it definitely isn't an automatic thing. I shoot my older cameras and my newer cameras almost interchangeably. Here's actually a video where I talk about getting great results with older gear. I use a Nikon D50 and basically get the same results as with my much newer cameras. Mike says, I have a Nikon 18-140 kit lens that came with my D7100 when I bought it, but I want a wider lens. I'm not made of money, but I'm willing to spend some bucks to get a quality lens for wide-angle landscape shots. I'm looking at the Nikon 10-24 or the 12-24. If it were you, which one would you get? I like the 10-24 f3.5 to f4.5 DX lens. It's ultra-wide and it's not as expensive as the 12-24. Jesse says, I am going on a family vacation to Disneyland. My DSLR feels too bulky to carry around, but I still want great photos. Suggestions? You're not the only one who feels like this. I made a video on something I invented. It's called the Disneyland Camera Index. It's completely made up, but it's based on my observations of which types or which camera types people are shooting at Disneyland each year. Here's a link to that video. Compacts on the market today are awesome, and there is a wide variety. And you might also like a mirrorless interchangeable lens camera if you want to invest a bit more. Both categories have their strengths. Compacts are usually less expensive and wonderfully pocketable. Mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras are flexible and can feel a bit more like a DSLR. The last time I went to Disneyland, I took my Nikon 1V1 and a couple small lenses from the collection, but I would have been just as happy with a compact camera. If I'm going into the park for maybe an hour or two around sunset, I love having a DSLR with me. But if I'm getting there early, riding all day, and staying late, I go with a smaller, more compact camera. Kevin has an interesting question for me. Ever go to take photos in a no trespassing / private area? Also, what's your opinion on that? Break the rules or follow? Kevin, I am such a rule follower, except for with art. Anyway, rules are around for a reason, but I can say that I've been known to bend a few rules just a little bit, as long as I knew for sure that I wasn't hurting anything or anyone. Rob asks, what's your opinion on light field photography? I just saw the Litro Ilum yesterday and was wondering if this is the future of photography. I don't know if it's the future of photography, but I do think it's pretty interesting. Since you asked for my opinion on it, for someone like me who does not enjoy post-processing as much at all as I enjoy the actual photo taking, I can't say that I'm super interested in it. Don't get me wrong though, the technology looks amazing, and perhaps in just a few years from now, the underlying technology will have worked its way into the cameras that we use every day. Jack says, none photography question. How did you get that scar on your lip? You know, Jack, no one has ever asked me about that before. I do have a scar on my bottom lip. I was, about 6 years old, and I was jumping on the couch, even though my mom told me not to, and I fell off and hit my lip on the corner of the coffee table. The lesson here is listen to your mother. She only wants what's best for you. On to Tom. I'm shooting an auto show this Friday, media day, press only, and the following weekend, open to public. Any tips for either / both shoots? Well, it depends on the purpose of the photos, but I can give you some general advice. First, flash is your enemy. All those shiny surfaces mean lots of reflections. So rather than use your flash, increase your ISO sensitivity and use lenses that allow you to open up to wider apertures. Also, try something new, different angles, up close details, ultra wide, capturing the entire scene so that your photos look different from the next guy's. Honestly, I sometimes look at what other photographers are doing and make sure that I'm doing something different. And last, have fun. Dave asks, chocolate, room temperature or from the fridge? Chocolate chips from the freezer, chocolate bars at room temperature. Nom, 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 nom. Luke's question is, I was wondering how to properly take and stitch together pictures for better image quality on landscapes and cityscapes. There is no one best way to stitch photos together. There is software out there that will help you out a lot, and some, like AutoStitch, that will figure out how a bunch of images fit together like a puzzle. But you said that you wanted to do it to get better image quality, and you will have an overall higher resolution for the photo if you stitch the images together, but I'm not sure that's what you were looking for. A company called GigaPan has automated solutions for this. It's like a robot for your camera that pans across an area and takes hundreds of images and then jams them all together into an extremely high resolution image. This is not something I've done, but there is a dedicated following for this. So if this is something that any of you out there do, leave Luke a note in the comments. Kevin says, I started the 365 project this year. Have you ever done it? And if so, any tips you can offer? Not formally, no. I just take photos all the time, but I think it could be a cool way to get your camera in your hands every day. But my advice would be, if it starts to feel like a chore, stop doing it. Richard, Are there any websites you use when traveling or are in need of a new local locale to find interesting spots to shoot? Google. I'll spend hours searching and skipping from site to site. Other times, I don't look at all, and I just like to discover the area on my own. Abdullah asks, is the Canon 50mm f1.8 good for portraits? Sure. It depends on your camera and on your style, though. You may find that 50mm on a full-frame camera is too wide for a single-person portrait, or you may like that you can include more background. On a cropped sensor body, your 50mm lens would give you an effective field of view right around 75mm, which you may find pleasing for a single-person portrait or headshot, but then maybe not wide enough for a couple or a group portrait. It's a great lens though, very sharp, and it's nice to be able to open up to wider apertures with it. Next up is Juan. What software can you recommend for HDR and simple tasks for beginners? I know you've mentioned Aperture, but do you know of any other programs that can be easily used? Thank you. I do like Aperture, but let me suggest Google's Picasa to get you started. It is a free download, and you may find that it does everything you need it to do. If you do want more, Adobe Lightroom is a great option. And for HDR, creating it in post-processing isn't a simple task, and I think I mentioned earlier, there are many different techniques, from in-camera options on some of the newest cameras, to automatic software options, to completely manual processes. One thing that I love about YouTube is that a quick search for HDR techniques produces a ton of different examples and tutorials of how to use all of the different methods. Jason asks, what is your opinion on VSCO film overlays? I've used them with all of my family/everyday photographs for a couple of years now because I feel they add a tasteful, timeless layer of character without being inorganic. Also, they bring a standard latitude back into RAW or NEF editing. From Jason in the Highlands of Scotland. I think it's cool. I think anything that you want to do to your photos that makes them look the way you want them to look is awesome. And now for Neil's question. Any advice on the best way to get the flash gun off the camera for more directional light? I actually have a video where I discuss this. I use a couple of different ways. I have a cable, and I also trigger off-camera flash optically. Daniel says, several weeks ago, I asked if you experimented with bondage photography and you said, wouldn't you like to know? Are you suggesting that I should sign up for your website? Daniel is referring to my last Q&A video. But no, you won't find anything quite like that on my site. And it's rare that I would tie any part of my body to any other part of my body or to a stationary object.
Okay, well, wait a minute. This doesn't feel sexy. No,
Bruce says, I have dust on my Nikon sensor. Camera shops say I should not try and remove the dust myself using the swatch tools they sell for $59, but instead I should let them have the cameras to do it and charge me $100 per body. Is it better to do it yourself or send it to a professional? I wouldn't ever suggest anyone do the cleaning themselves unless they have experience. Now, the only way to get experience is to actually do it, right? The thing is, it is really risky to do it yourself. So you have to ask yourself, is it more worth it to you to save a bit of money and clean it yourself? Or is it more worth it to have a pro do it and minimize risk to your camera? If you absolutely want to do it, I'll point you to some sites that have a good method and show you what to buy for less than $59. You can email me at secrets@snapchick.com. I don't want to endorse or recommend any particular method here in this video, because if people hear me talk about it and then try it and then mess up their sensor or shutter, it just gives me the shivers. Matthew's question is, why do I find it so difficult to find inspiration? I love taking photographs, but always seem to get lackluster photos more often than not. Any pro tips on boosting my creativity? Well, it seems you're asking two different questions. Being inspired and actually taking photos that you like are not the same thing. If you find that you enjoy taking photos, but you just don't like your results, I suggest really taking a look at your work. What exactly is it that you like or don't like? Another good thing to do is to take an art or aesthetics class, or even just pick up a book from the library on the subject. Compare artworks that you like to what you have created and, what's different about them. Is it composition? Is it subject matter? Or is it something else? And just, talking about creativity. I have lots of ways to get stimulated. You can find my video on the subject here. Donald asks, I shoot in RAW and touch up the color in Lightroom. I then save the file as PSD and run it through Photoshop CC. What's the best format to save it as I plan to print the photo? JPEGs are widely accepted for printing. If you're printing in-house, you could go TIFF or even straight from the PSD file. If you're uploading or printing from a memory card at a store, you probably just want to be using JPEGs. That's it for today, guys. Great questions. I got some good ideas for videos and photo shoots even. And I will definitely do another Q&A sometime soon, but feel free to ask me questions anytime.